Hope everyone is doing well on this rainy election day. Here we are, the third day of early voting. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. As I alluded to, we'll have some guests joining us in a moment to talk a little bit about early voting and answer some questions you all may have. But I wanted to brief you all today at this now beginning of our August primary election voting period. We've just started the push to the August primary election. Today, we're 90 days out or 99 days out from the presidential election in November. And it's remarkable because here we are in the beginning of what will be a very significant election season in which the eyes of the nation will be on our state, just as they were in 2020. And as a state through which the presidency runs, as a battleground state, our citizens are very likely to cast votes in this cycle that will determine the next president of the United States. So we, and I know they, take that responsibility seriously, the importance of ensuring every valid vote counts, and only valid votes count is at the forefront of our minds. And we're going to start by today really talking about that theme and how we'll work throughout the cycle ahead to make sure that we continue to communicate to every citizen the rightly placed faith they should have in our elections and our processes, and the faith they should have in their voice, in their vote, because that vote that they will cast in this election cycle reflects their voice. And today we want to make sure in the primary election that every voice is heard and every eligible voter casts a ballot in this primary and again in November. We have just wrapped up the first weekend of early voting for that August primary, and notably, it is the first significant statewide election in which we are seeing early voting play out. In 2022, of course, you all know Michiganders voted overwhelmingly to amend our state constitution to mandate at least 9 days of early voting in every statewide election. And so this is the second election in which every Michigan voter has had that opportunity, and perhaps the most significant thus far. As always, I want to express my gratitude to Michigan's county and municipal clerks who have worked tirelessly over these last few years, and particularly in these last few months, to ensure that we are ready for early voting and that every citizen can access their option to vote in person early this week up through Sunday, and that they can know, along with our clerks, that our process of early voting is safe, secure, and convenient. Our clerks are election workers. They serve on the front lines of our democracy. We know they are under enormous pressure, and I'm very grateful for their service, and our office will continue to stand with them and support them all across the state as we work through this primary and the November election. Our clerks all across the state have been reporting overall that early voting has gone smoothly through the weekend. There have been no major problems. We had an issue on Saturday that some of you covered in regards to a state of Michigan server that temporarily affected the ability of some clerks to connect to the early voting e-poll book. That was quickly addressed, and notably the backup procedures that we have in place in every election enabled voting to continue seamlessly, and that really underscores our preparation. When issues occur, and they do, we know our clerks are continued dedicated to ensuring a smooth process in which any backup scenarios are issued, and they can continue to, as they did on Saturday, issue ballots and keep voting records secure. After the early voting locations closed yesterday, Sunday, more than 10,600 voters had cast a ballot at an early voting site in Michigan. That's about 6,400 on 6,400 on Saturday and 4,200 on Sunday. And as of this morning, more than 1.6 million citizens in Michigan have requested a ballot for the primary, and almost 700,000 have completed and submitted their ballot 1 week prior to Election Day. I want to turn now to David Becker. David is the executive director and the founder of the Center for Election Innovation and Research, a national organization that works with election officials in every state of both parties all across the country to help ensure trust in our system and that our elections are secure. David's going to share how early voting here in Michigan and nationwide helps ensure the security and safety of our elections. And so, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thanks, Secretary Benson. It's great to be with you all here today. Um, as Secretary Benson mentioned, I work with election officials all over the country of both parties, and I have been for over 25 years. Um, to put this in perspective, let's think back to Michigan's last non COVID presidential election, which was 8 years ago in 2016. And Michigan went from offering relatively few options with regard to early and mail voting to now becoming a leader, joining so many other states in offering many convenient options for eligible voters to vote in this state. That is a really, really good thing. If you look nationwide, this is a trend. 97%, over 97% of all voters in the United States have access to early in person voting, all but voters in 3 states, Mississippi, Alabama, and New Hampshire. And voters in 39 states, including Michigan, of course, have access to a mail ballot without the need for an excuse. This gives them many options. It allows voters to spread out their activity over a series of days and multiple methods of casting a ballot. It allows election officials to spread that activity out as well over a series of days so that you're not concentrating all of that voting into a 12 or 14-hour period on a single Tuesday in November. And most importantly, if you think about that, that's what leads to tremendous security benefits for states that, like Michigan, offer widespread options for voting either by mail or early. Concentrating all voting into a single 12 or 14-hour period on a single Tuesday creates a single point of potential failure for a lot of things to happen. Could be traffic, it could be weather, it could be a power outage, it could be some kind of intentional attack on the system, a cyber event or something else, or it could be some kind of malfunction of technology. We just saw in the last few weeks the CrowdStrike incident, which affected systems nationwide in many ways. For those of us that were flying, it affected us quite a bit. And it affected election systems as well, not because they were connected to the internet, but because election offices use technology just like everyone else does. And so in states that were holding early voting at that time, there were some delays. But the good news is those delays didn't have an impact on the actual vote from the perspective of any voters, because they were able to come back. They came back later in some cases. They were able to fix this. They didn't need to try to fix this on a single day, discovering a problem at, say, 11 a.m. or noon on election day, having to fix it in a panic. This is why Michigan in 2024 is more secure than Michigan has ever been. And honestly, it's why voting overall in the United States in 2024 is more secure, transparent, and verified than it's ever been before. So with that, should I pass it over to you again?
Thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you for being here and for all your work, not only here in Michigan, but all across the country to strengthen our democracy and ensure that every vote counts and that our processes are secure. Another first that we're implementing this year, thanks to the passage of the constitutional amendment of Proposal 2 in 2022, is the secure early tabulation of absentee ballots. As I mentioned before, there are 1.6 million absentee ballots already requested for this election cycle, and nearly half of them have already been returned. That means under these new procedures, 165 jurisdictions are able to begin pre-processing and tabulating those ballots now, the week before Election Day. It's a significant change that we know will contribute to helping us ensure our counting of valid votes continues to be secure, efficient, and that we can give results to all of you in the media as well as citizens throughout our state and country as quickly as possible while maintaining that security. One of the clerks whose jurisdiction has been at the forefront of using this new procedure is here with us today, Clerk Melanie Riska of the City of Sterling Heights. Melanie has been a leader in our election administration community for many years. I'm really grateful for her leadership in Sterling Heights and all around our state. And I was hoping you could share a little bit about how early voting has been going in your community and why you chose the pre-tabulation option for absentee ballots in the primary.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. I'm Melanie Riska, the city clerk in Sterling Heights. So early voting for us, we started in February for the presidential primary on February 27th, we had a really great turnout. I think we were ranked number 9 in the state in the number of voters who came out to early vote for that first ever election that we offered it. And this election, the first weekend, which was this past weekend, it was a little bit slower than we had hoped. However, we've already seen an uptick as of this morning, and we now have 2 early vote locations. In February, we had 1. So we're excited to be able to offer even more options to our voters, for the August primary, and then hopefully even more for November. So we really encourage our voters to come out and early vote. It's a great opportunity for them to have the option of which day to come out and actually vote their ballot, put it into a tabulator, as opposed to putting it in an envelope to our office. And they don't have to come on election day, when sometimes it's limiting to individuals who work. So as far as the early tabulation of our AV ballots, what I can say is in 2020, let's just go back a little bit, we processed about 42,000 absent voter ballots at the presidential election in 2020. That took our team it was about 27 hours, and it took about 90 people. That's a huge strain on the process overall. And so with early voting, we hope to have some of those voters vote early. And then with pre-processing or early tabulation, we hope to alleviate some of that work and that strain that we have on election day. That will give us an opportunity to focus on the ballots that are being returned the day before or on election day, to process those on election day. As far as results, getting results for early tabulation or AAV, no results are distributed or even ran before 8 p.m. on election night. And we do have at 8 p.m., voters are able to turn their ballots into any one of our drop boxes across the state for, in the community that they live. And we pick those up at the last pickup at 8 p.m. on election night. So there is some time that it takes to process those ballots before we can even get them to the AV board. So we should be able to get results out a bit faster than we did in 2020. But there is still, it's not going to be at 8:30 as some people would like, so to speak. But I really do believe that us expanding our voting options with early voting, and also individuals who get their ballot at home by mail, they're able to take that ballot to their early voting center and tabulate it there. And they can also take that ballot to their precinct on election day and tabulate it there. So that's even more options to get their ballots tabulated. But I think all of these efforts that we've made in the state of Michigan, through a constitutional amendment through the legislature, have increased our voters' access to the ballot box. And I think that because we have all of these options, I'll echo what Mr. Becker had said, but because we have all of these options, it does really make our elections secure. And we are committed to preserving the integrity of our elections in Michigan. There are so many checks and balances that we have through every single process that make sure that, that integrity is preserved, and that our elections are fair, and that, the results that we get at the end of the election night actually reflects the will of the voters. So I just thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Melanie. Thank you for your hard work and for being here in the midst of early voting. It's always great. I always love visiting Sterling Heights during the voting period because of your well-run operation, and this year is no different. So I'm grateful for you sharing your perspective, as well as all that you do to make our elections more secure. I'm proud to say that Michigan's election officials, like Melanie, continue to implement the will of our voters with these new options and improve the processes that we already saw play out in 2020. There's still a week left for us to spread the word about early voting in Michigan, and we really want your help to ensure Michigan citizens know about this option to cast their ballot in person before Election Day. The last day to vote early is Sunday, August 4th, and anyone can visit michigan.gov/early voting to find their local early voting location and their hours of operation. And as a reminder, any citizen who requested an absentee ballot does have the option to return them to an early voting site if they don't want to return it at a drop box. At this point, we would not advise anyone to use the mail to return their ballot if they have not yet done so. Please bring it to an early voting site. That's what I'll be doing personally to vote in this primary, and we want everyone to know about that option as well. I also want to encourage every Michigan citizen to make sure you are getting the facts during our primary and general elections. Because of the spotlight our state will be under, we anticipate and are already seeing significant and scores of efforts to confuse citizens about their options to vote and the security of their options and the accuracy of our results. We encourage every citizen to always check with official sources like your local clerk's office or go to michigan.gov/vote. We've also launched a democracy ambassador program to help spread the word about all of these different ways in which citizens can be a part in spreading trusted information about our elections. You can sign up for our democracy ambassador program and receive important election information, social media graphics that you can share, fact sheets, flyers, and other materials, all of which you can share with your networks, be it on social media or elsewhere, and other members of your community. Voters can sign up at michigan.gov/democracy ambassador to get more information. And I encourage every citizen to consider doing that. It's your way to be a part of protecting and defending democracy in this noisy time. And finally, even if you don't vote early or with an absentee ballot, you can always vote at your polling place on Election Day. That's Tuesday, August 6th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. And as a reminder, as Melanie emphasized, our clerks will be working throughout these days ahead, and particularly on Election Day, to ensure every valid vote is counted efficiently, accurately, and securely. That does take time, and that does mean that we may not have, as others have emphasized, the results of every election immediately upon the polls closing. We ask for your help, both as citizens and in the media, in helping people understand what's going on during that period from when between the polls close and the unofficial results are made clear in every election. We want to make sure candidates as well know to not falsely or prematurely declare victory before every vote is counted, because that helps us ensure that as the votes are tabulated, the process remains secure and that citizens can have faith in and trust the results as they become available. As we get closer, not just to Election Day on Tuesday in our primary, but Election Day in November, we'll have more information on what you can expect in terms of results and reporting and all of that, just as we did in 2020 and in 2022. So stay tuned. I see this press conference as kind of like the kickoff into the fall election season that will culminate in Election Day just 99 days from now. So buckle up, we're ready, and I know our citizens and the folks here today are as well. Now I'm happy to take a few questions. Yeah.
Sorry, Lily Gwynny from Gongwer. So could you speak a little bit to the distribution and variance of early voters around the state? Were there any areas where people turned out more than others? Any areas where, things were maybe expected to be higher but weren't?
We're going to be tracking that in the months ahead and in the days ahead. We are, this is day 3 of early voting. So what I hope to be able to do after the primary election is actually release the top 10 communities for early voting in our state and encourage citizens who want their community to be in the top 10 to participate in the fall. And we want to recognize the hard work of election officials who have been in many ways working overtime to inform citizens about this new option. We also see data that the more people know that they can vote early and that it's easy and secure and they know where to go, the more likely they are to take advantage of it. And so a lot of what we're doing is that proactive education, and we'll see and we'll get a sense after this primary of where we need to perhaps lean in and do a little more leaning into November.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You talked about manipulating content via AI and media as a threat to election security. You probably saw the fake Elon Musk video, the Kamala Harris ad. Over the weekend, the governor herself posted a manipulated video showing Red Wings fans cheering at a screen showing Kamala and booing at a screen showing J.D. Vance. Have you noticed these type of videos become more common? Does it sort of become more of an issue of combating it when the governor herself is sort of using it as campaign content?
Yeah, as we explore and see the use of artificial intelligence proliferate in every aspect of our lives in the months ahead, I think it's important that we hone in on when it can be most malicious. And as the laws in Michigan have made clear, it's most malicious when someone is intentionally trying to deceive someone about a candidate's position, about what a candidate has said or done, or an election procedure or voting procedure that they should rightfully have access to. So our focus is really on that in this moment as we see how artificial intelligence evolves and equipping citizens to be critical consumers of information whenever they see it so they can understand what a manipulated image is and what it might be trying to convey in a particular instance. What we also have an eye on, however, are foreign adversaries who may be using AI to not just manipulate people's understanding of where to vote, how to vote, or their understanding of the security of our elections, but also again intentionally deceiving citizens about a candidate's position on something or otherwise trying to make it seem as though someone said something that they didn't actually say.
Secretary, you had mentioned earlier that you're already seeing some efforts to undermine this election. I'm curious if you could go into that a little bit more detail, kind of what types of things are you seeing and how does this compare to what we saw in 2020?
Well, I think we've seen, candidates, U.S. senators say they won't accept election results essentially if they don't like them, or if their preferred candidate doesn't win. That's incredibly dangerous in a democracy where our clerks, Democrats, Republicans, independents, are professionally working to ensure that every vote counts and that people can trust the results of the election, even if they're unhappy with them. And so, one of the things that's been alarming is the proliferation of the number of leaders, not just candidates, not just one candidate, repeating those types of suspicions without any merit or basis in fact. And it makes me concerned that in this era of political violence that we are clearly in, that comments such as that, casting wrongly, in my view, aspersions on the election process themselves, can lead to potentially violence not just against candidates but election officials and election administrators. It's one of the reasons why in 2023 we passed a law in Michigan to make it to increasingly make it a felony for someone to threaten an election worker in their line of duty, so that we can try to protect folks who are just simply doing their jobs. But certainly, we're all on guard in the months ahead and trying to communicate the futility of casting these false aspersions on the security of our elections. And my hope is that we can soon turn the page on this moment and return to a time where even if you lost an election, you accepted the results as an accurate reflection of the will of the people. Sure.
Are you seeing these things in Michigan where we're still seeing threats to election workers, or are these is the 2023 law already having an effect?
We saw in Oakland County earlier this year the election director in the county, Joe Roselle, being threatened by an individual who was unhappy with the process and with the election, even in a local race. And so that shows us just how deeply that type of vitriol has proliferated, and so it's alarming. But in speaking with Mr. Roselle after the incident, he specifically said how grateful he was to know there was a law in place that drew a clear line in the sand about what was not acceptable when and that in my conversations with election clerks makes them feel that law makes them feel more protected than perhaps before. We've also been running scenario planning exercises with law enforcement, first responders, and our clerks all across the state to make sure that we've got a rapid response plan in place if anything does erupt or occur on election day, so that we can be ready, and that folks who we need to be on guard are on guard and able to rapidly address any situation should they arise. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Haley Harding with VoteBeat. Could you go back to what happened on Saturday with the outage? Could you explain what caused it? You said it was a server issue, and what's being done to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, my understanding is that it was a state of Michigan server in which at one point there were a number of other applications that were running in the server that caused a spike in activity that then slowed down the process across the state for our particular application, the early voting e-poll book. So in our conversations with the Department of Technology, Management and Budget, DTMB, we've made clear that was something that shouldn't happen again, and it won't. It sort of underscores, the one of the, I don't know if I would call it a benefit, but one of the assets of early voting is that it enables us to catch something like that on a Saturday when you still have, 8.75 days of early voting to go, and then fix and make sure it doesn't happen again. I'm confident it won't happen again. But what I was also, as it unfolded, grateful to see is how clerks who had been trained to know how to respond in the instance of any technology failing, that they quickly responded with the backup plans we had in place. And it showed that even though we can't perhaps eliminate any potential variable in occurring, we can minimize its impact. And that's what we were able to do on Saturday. But to answer your question, I'm confident it won't happen again. And we are now made clear to DTMB the importance of protecting the access to the servers during the early voting period and prioritizing early voting among over perhaps other projects that may have caused a spike in use at that particular moment.
Now, I know there's been a lot of, from certain activists, criticism of e-poll books. Do you think, what would be your response to those who would say, this is another example of why we maybe shouldn't be using those?
Yeah, I mean, I actually would invite David to respond because he's been seeing this nationwide. I'll say in Michigan, as we modernize the elections process, there are always going to be, and we welcome questions and concerns about changes and evolutions that make things more secure and efficient. I'm confident that the process we had in place to both develop the e-poll book, as well as what's been done in other states to similarly create this ability to check voters in and give them ballots actually helps us make the process more accurate and secure than ever before. And David, I'll turn it over to you in case you have more to say on that.
Yeah, I'd just say, to put this into national perspective, we've seen a steady trend towards e-poll books as jurisdictions across the country, red, blue, everything in between, are finding the right balance between access and integrity. That's what the election officials are always doing, working every day on that. And e-poll books allow for things such as real-time or batch up, very regular updates with the state voter file, so you can make sure people aren't voting twice. It allows for people to vote at multiple different locations during early voting, so they don't have to vote in just one single location. It's good for the voters. It's good for election officials. It's good for integrity. And then, as Secretary Benson noted, you have to have backups just in case. And states do have backups. Those backups often look like what we saw prior to e-poll books, paper poll books and things of the like, that are then quickly updated as soon as the technological issues are dealt with. But there's a reason you are seeing a trend across the country towards things like e-poll books. They help voters because it makes it more convenient. It also allows for better integrity because, better than any system we have, it prevents someone from voting more than one time in any given election.
All right, thanks. We'll continue to be available throughout the early voting period for any questions you might have. And we'll see you again in about a week around Election Day for more updates as we move forward through this election cycle. Thanks again for being here. Thanks.